Everyone, death is a mystery that has fascinated humanity for centuries. Different cultures, religions, and scientific perspectives offer various explanations about what happens after we take our last breath. Today, let's explore some of the possibilities, from religious beliefs to scientific theories, about what may lie beyond death. Across different cultures and faiths, the idea of an afterlife is deeply rooted, offering both comfort and guidance to believers. In Christianity, the afterlife is often depicted as a division between heaven and hell. According to Christian beliefs, those who have lived righteous lives and accepted God's grace are welcomed into heaven, a paradise of eternal peace and joy in the presence of God. On the other hand, those who have committed sins without repentance may face judgment and be sent to hell, a place of suffering and separation from God. Many Christians also believe in purgatory, a temporary state of purification for souls who are ultimately destined for heaven but must first be cleansed of their sins. Islam also emphasizes life after death, teaching that every individual will be resurrected on the day of judgment. Their deeds, whether good or bad, will be weighed, determining whether they will enter Jannah, paradise, or Jahannam, hell. The Quran describes Jannah as a place of eternal bliss, gardens of delight and closeness to Allah, while Jahannam is depicted as a realm of suffering for those who rejected faith or lived unjustly. However, Islam also teaches that Allah is merciful, and some souls may eventually be forgiven and allowed to enter paradise. In Hinduism, the concept of reincarnation plays a crucial role in understanding life after death. Rather than viewing death as an end, Hindus believe it is part of an ongoing cycle known as samsara, where the soul, Atman, is reborn into a new body based on past karma. A person's actions in their current life, the ultimate goal in Hinduism is to achieve moksha or liberation from this cycle, allowing the soul to unite with Brahman, the supreme universal consciousness. Similarly, Buddhism also embraces the idea of reincarnation, but with a unique perspective. Buddhists believe in the concept of anatta, or the absence of a permanent self. Instead of an eternal soul being reborn, it is one's karma and energy that continues to shape future existences. The ultimate aim in Buddhism is to attain nirvana, a state of enlightenment where one is freed from suffering and the endless cycle of rebirth. Unlike traditional notions of an afterlife, nirvana represents the complete cessation of existence in the material and spiritual realms. Judaism, while less focused on detailed depictions of the afterlife, does acknowledge life beyond death in various ways. Some Jewish teachings describe Olam Haba, the world to come, a spiritual realm where righteous souls find peace. Others believe in resurrection, particularly in the Messianic era when the dead will return to life. However, Jewish beliefs about the afterlife vary widely, with some branches focusing more on leading a just and meaningful life in the present, rather than speculating about what follows death. Ancient religions and Indian national spiritual traditions also hold unique views on the afterlife. In ancient Egyptian beliefs, for example, the journey after death required passing through judgment in the Hall of Ma'at, where a person's heart was weighed against the feather of truth. If it was lighter than the feather, the soul would enter the blissful field of reeds. If not, it would be devoured by a monstrous deity. Likewise, many Native American and African tribal religions see death as a transition to a spirit world, where ancestors continue to guide and protect their descendants. Some traditions emphasize maintaining harmony with the spirit realm through rituals, offerings, and ancestral veneration. Despite their differences, these religious perspectives on the afterlife share common themes. The idea that human actions have consequences beyond death, that morality and faith play roles in what happens next, and that death is not an end but a transformation into another form of existence. While some envision a paradise or a cycle of rebirth, others seek ultimate liberation from suffering. These beliefs have provided guidance, solace, and a sense of purpose for countless people throughout history, influencing the way they live their lives in the present. From a scientific perspective, death is the irreversible cessation of biological functions that sustain life. While many religious and philosophical traditions provide interpretations of what happens after death, science approaches the question from an empirical and materialistic standpoint. The scientific view is primarily concerned with understanding death as a biological process, exploring what happens to the body, brain, and consciousness when life ends. The biological process of death, medically, death is typically classified into two main stages: clinical death and biological death. Clinical death occurs when the heart stops beating, breathing ceases, and the body no longer shows signs of life. At this point, the brain is deprived of oxygen, but resuscitation may still be possible if medical intervention is applied quickly. However, if the heart and lungs do not restart, biological death sets in. This is when cells begin to break down due to a lack of oxygen, leading to irreversible damage to the body's organs and tissues. Once death occurs, the body undergoes several observable changes. Rigor mortis, the stiffening of muscles, begins a few hours after death due to chemical changes in muscle fibers. Livor mortis, or post-mortem lividity, causes blood to settle in the lower parts of the body, creating a purplish discoloration. Over time, decomposition begins as bacteria and enzymes break down tissues, leading to the eventual return of organic matter to the environment. This natural process of decay highlights the scientific principle that matter is never truly destroyed, but is instead transformed into different forms. What happens to consciousness? One of the biggest questions in the scientific study of death is what happens to consciousness, the self-awareness and thoughts that define our experience of life. Neuroscientists generally argue that consciousness is a product of brain activity, relying on the complex interactions of neurons, electrical impulses, and chemical reactions. When the brain ceases to function, many scientists believe that consciousness also ceases to exist, similar to a light turning off when the power supply is cut. However, this explanation does not satisfy everyone. Some researchers, particularly in fields like quantum physics and neuroscience, are exploring whether consciousness might be more than just a product of the brain. There are theories suggesting that consciousness could be a fundamental aspect of the universe, much like space and time. One hypothesis proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff is the orchestrated objective reduction or theory, which suggests that consciousness is linked to quantum processes within brain cells. According to this view, consciousness might continue in some way after death, possibly existing independently of the body. Near-death experiences and scientific explanations. One intriguing area of study in the science of death is near-death experiences, NDEs. Many people who have been close to death, particularly those who have been revived after clinical death, report similar experiences. Seeing bright lights floating above their bodies, encountering deceased loved ones, or feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Some even claim to have gained knowledge they could not have possibly known. While some interpret these experiences as evidence of an afterlife, scientists have sought to explain them through biological and psychological mechanisms. One theory is that NDEs are caused by oxygen deprivation in the brain, which can trigger hallucinations and altered states of perception. Another possibility is the release of neurotransmitters such as endorphins and DMT, a psychedelic compound produced in small amounts by the brain, which could create vivid dream-like experiences. Studies using brain imaging have also suggested that during moments of extreme trauma or cardiac arrest, the brain may enter a hyperactive state, generating intense and meaningful visions, energy, and the conservation of matter. Another perspective in the scientific discussion about death is based on the laws of physics, particularly the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change form. Some people argue that if consciousness is a form of energy, then it must continue in some way after death, even if not in the form of personal awareness. While mainstream science does not confirm this idea as proof of life after death, it opens up discussions about how energy from living beings is recycled back into the universe. For example, our bodies decompose and return to the earth. On a broader scale, the atoms that make up our bodies have existed for billions of years, originating from stars that exploded long before our solar system formed. In a way, science suggests that while our individual consciousness may end, the physical components that made up our bodies continue to exist in different forms throughout the universe. The challenge of studying death scientifically. One of the biggest challenges in studying what happens after death is the difficulty of obtaining empirical evidence. Science relies on observable, repeatable experiments, but death is a one-way journey that makes it nearly impossible to study directly. Brain function can be monitored up until death, but what happens beyond that remains unknown. While some scientists are developing ways to extend life through cryonics, freezing bodies in hopes of future revival, or artificial intelligence, uploading human consciousness into computers, there is currently no definitive way to determine whether consciousness continues in any form after death. Because of these limitations, the scientific view on death remains largely focused on what can be measured: the biological processes, neurological changes, and psychological phenomena that occur as life ends. Whether or not there is something beyond physical existence remains an open question, with ongoing debates between materialist and non-materialist viewpoints. One of the most intriguing and widely discussed phenomena related to death is the near-death experience. Throughout history, countless individuals who have been close to death, whether through cardiac arrest, severe trauma, or other life-threatening situations, have reported extraordinary experiences that challenge our understanding of consciousness and the afterlife. These experiences often share strikingly similar elements, regardless of a person's culture, religion, or personal beliefs. Common features of near-death experiences. Although NDEs can vary from person to person, many accounts include a set of common elements: a sense of leaving the body. Many individuals describe floating above their physical bodies, observing medical personnel trying to revive them, or even witnessing events happening in other rooms. Moving through a tunnel. Some report being drawn through a tunnel or vortex, often toward a bright, warm light entering. Beings of light or deceased loved ones. Many people describe meeting spiritual figures, angels, deceased relatives, or religious figures who communicate with them. a feeling of peace and unconditional love. NDEs are often accompanied by an overwhelming sense of calm, love, and bliss, making the experiencer reluctant to return to life. A life review, some individuals claim to have experienced a panoramic instant replay of their entire life, where they feel the impact of their actions on others, a border or point of no return. Many describe reaching a boundary beyond which they sense they cannot return to their earthly existence. After being revived, many people who undergo an NDE report feeling profoundly changed, often losing their fear of death and gaining a new sense of purpose and spirituality. Scientific explanations for near-death experiences. While NDEs are often interpreted as evidence of an afterlife, scientists have attempted to explain them through biological and neurological mechanisms. Some of the most common scientific theories include lack of oxygen. The brain requires a continuous supply of oxygen to function properly. During cardiac arrest or severe trauma, oxygen deprivation can lead to hallucinations, tunnel vision, and a sensation of floating, similar to what happens in an NDE. Neurotransmitter surges. When the body is under extreme stress, it releases a flood of chemicals, including endorphins and DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which are known to produce euphoric. Some researchers suggest that the release of these compounds in a dying brain could explain many aspects of NDEs. Temporal lobe activity. The temporal lobe of the brain is responsible for processing emotions, memory, and sensory experiences. Some scientists believe that unusual electrical activity in this region, triggered by trauma, could create intense and vivid hallucinations resembling NDEs. REM intrusion and the dying brain hypothesis. Some researchers propose that near-death experiences occur when the brain enters a dreamlike state while still conscious. This phenomenon, known as REM intrusion, can cause sensations of paralysis, floating, or out-of-body experiences. Studies have shown that people who experience sleep paralysis or vivid dreams are more likely to report NDE-like sensations. The dying brain hypothesis. Some neurologists argue that as the brain begins to shut down, it goes through a predictable sequence of electrical changes that produce an illusion of an afterlife. Research using EEG scans has shown that in the moments before death, the brain experiences a surge of activity that could explain the vivid perceptions of NDEs. Although these scientific explanations provide possible insights, they do not fully account for all aspects of NDEs, such as cases where people report seeing things that were later verified as accurate, even though they were clinically unconscious at the time. Spiritual and metaphysical interpretations. Beyond science, many believe that NDEs provide genuine proof of life after death. Some of the strongest arguments for this perspective include consistent patterns across cultures. Despite differences in religion or beliefs, NDEs often share the same core elements, suggesting a universal experience beyond cultural conditioning. Out-of-body perceptions that are later verified. There are cases where people undergoing NDEs report seeing specific details about their surroundings that they could not have physically observed while unconscious. For example, some individuals have described the actions of doctors working on them, events happening in adjacent hospital rooms, or even specific objects placed out of their normal field of view. Profound transformations after an NDE. Many who experience NDEs undergo dramatic personality shifts, becoming more compassionate, spiritual, or altruistic. They often report losing their fear of death and gaining a sense of interconnectedness with the universe. Some religious traditions view NDEs as glimpses of the afterlife, interpreting them as visits to heaven, encounters with angels, or moments of divine judgment. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, NDEs are sometimes seen as temporary departures of the soul from the body, reinforcing the belief in reincarnation and spiritual evolution. NDEs and the study of consciousness. One of the biggest implications of NDE research is its challenge to the mainstream scientific view that consciousness is solely a product of brain activity. If consciousness continues to exist independently of the body, it raises profound questions about the nature of reality and the possibility of an afterlife. Some researchers propose that consciousness is non-local, meaning it exists outside of the physical brain and may persist out of death. This idea aligns with quantum theories that suggest consciousness could be a fundamental part of the universe, rather than merely a byproduct of brain function. A famous case study that supports this perspective is that of Dr. Ibn Alexander, a neurosurgeon who experienced an NDE while in a coma due to bacterial meningitis. Despite severe brain damage, he reported vivid experiences of another realm, which he later detailed in his book Proof of Heaven. His case and others like it continue to fuel debates about whether NDEs represent actual glimpses of an afterlife or are simply the final hallucinations of a dying brain. Although NDEs remain a mystery, they provide a fascinating intersection between science, spirituality, and philosophy. Research in this field continues to challenge our understanding of what happens when we die, leaving open the question of whether these experiences are merely illusions or something far greater. One of the most intriguing and widely discussed phenomena related to death is the near-death experience, NDE. Throughout history, countless individuals who have been close to death, whether through cardiac arrest, severe trauma, or other life-threatening situations, have reported extraordinary experiences that challenge our understanding of consciousness and the afterlife. These experiences often share strikingly similar elements, regardless of a person's culture, religion, or personal beliefs. Common features of near-death experiences. Although near-deaths can vary from person to person, many accounts include a set of common elements. A sense of leaving the body. Many individuals describe floating above their physical bodies, observing medical personnel trying to revive them, or even witnessing events happening in other rooms, moving through a tunnel. Some report being drawn through a tunnel or vortex, often toward a bright, warm light, encountering beings of light or deceased loved ones. Many people describe meeting spiritual figures, angels, deceased relatives, or religious figures who communicate with them. A feeling of peace and unconditional love. NDEs are often accompanied by an overwhelming sense of calm, love, and bliss, making the experiencer reluctant to return to life. A life review. Some individuals claim to have experienced a panoramic, instant replay of their entire life where they feel the impact of their actions on others. A border or point of no return. Many describe reaching a boundary beyond which they sense they cannot return to their earthly existence. After being revived, many people who undergo an NDE report feeling profoundly changed, often losing their fear of death and gaining a new sense of purpose and spirituality. Scientific explanations for near-death experiences. While NDEs are often interpreted as evidence of an afterlife, scientists have attempted to explain them through biological and neurological mechanisms. Some of the most common scientific theories include lack of oxygen, hypoxia. The brain requires a continuous supply of oxygen to function properly. During cardiac arrest or severe trauma, oxygen deprivation can lead to hallucinations, tunnel vision, and a sensation of floating, similar to what happens in an NDE. Neurotransmitter surges. When the body is under extreme stress, it releases a flood of chemicals, including endorphins and DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which are known to produce euphoric and hallucinatory effects. Some researchers suggest that the release of these compounds in a dying brain could explain many aspects of NDEs. Temporal lobe activity. The temporal lobe of the brain is responsible for processing emotions, memory, and sensory experiences. Some scientists believe that unusual electrical activity in this region, triggered by trauma, could create intense and vivid hallucinations resembling NDEs, REM intrusion, and the dying brain hypothesis. Some researchers propose that near-death experiences occur when the brain enters a dreamlike state while still conscious. This phenomenon, known as REM intrusion, can cause sensations of paralysis, floating, or out-of-body experiences. Studies have shown that people who experience sleep paralysis or vivid dreams are more likely to report NDE-like sensations. The dying brain hypothesis. Some neurologists argue that as the brain begins to shut down, it goes through a predictable sequence of electrical changes that produce an illusion of an afterlife. Research using EEG scans has shown that in the moments before death, the brain experiences a surge of activity that could explain the vivid perceptions of NDEs. Although these scientific explanations provide possible insights, they do not fully account for all aspects of NDEs, such as cases where people report seeing things that were later verified as accurate, even though they were clinically unconscious at the time. Spiritual and metaphysical interpretations. Beyond science, many believe that NDEs provide genuine proof of life after death. Some of the strongest arguments for this perspective include consistent patterns across cultures. Despite differences in religion or beliefs, NDEs often share the same core elements, suggesting a universal experience beyond cultural conditioning, out-of-body perceptions that are later verified. There are cases where people undergoing NDEs report seeing specific details about their surroundings that they could not have physically observed while unconscious. For example, some individuals have described the actions of doctors working on them, events happening in adjacent hospital rooms, or even specific objects placed out of their normal field of view. Profound transformations after an NDE. Many who experience NDEs undergo dramatic personality shifts, becoming more compassionate, spiritual, or altruistic. They often report losing their fear of death and gaining a sense of interconnectedness with the universe. Some religious traditions view NDEs as glimpses of the afterlife, interpreting them as visits to heaven, encounters with angels, or moments of divine judgment. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, NDEs are sometimes seen as temporary departures of the soul from the body, reinforcing the belief in reincarnation and spiritual evolution. NDEs and the study of consciousness are one of the biggest implications of NDE research. It's its challenge to the mainstream scientific view that consciousness is solely a product. If consciousness continues to exist independently of the body, it raises profound questions about the nature of reality and the possibility of an afterlife. Some researchers propose that consciousness is non-local, meaning it exists outside of the physical brain and may persist outside of the death. This idea aligns with quantum theories that suggest consciousness could be a fundamental part of the universe, rather than merely a byproduct of brain function. A famous case study that supports this perspective is that of Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who experienced an NDE while in a coma due to bacterial meningitis. Despite severe brain damage, he reported vivid experiences of another realm, which he later detailed in his book Proof of Heaven. His case and others like it continue to fuel debates about whether NDEs represent actual glimpses of a dying brain. Although NDEs remain a mystery, they provide a fascinating intersection between science, spirituality, and philosophy. Research in this field continues to challenge our understanding of what happens when we die, leaving open the question of whether these experiences are merely illusions or something far greater. Reincarnation, the belief that the soul or consciousness is reborn into a new body after death, is one of the most enduring ideas about what happens after we die. This concept has been deeply embedded in various religious and spiritual traditions, particularly in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and certain mystical branches of other faiths. The idea of reincarnation suggests that death is not the end of existence, but rather a transition, a stepping stone in a much larger journey of spiritual evolution and self-discovery. The role of karma in reincarnation. One of the most important principles associated with reincarnation is karma, the idea that our actions in this life influence the circumstances of our next life. This belief, particularly emphasized in Hinduism and Buddhism, suggests that good deeds, virtuous behavior, and selfless actions result in a favorable rebirth, while harmful actions, selfishness, and cruelty may lead to a less desirable existence. Hinduism and reincarnation. In Hinduism, reincarnation is seen as part of the samsara cycle, the endless wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. The ultimate goal is to achieve moksha or liberation from this cycle, allowing the soul, Atman, to reunite with Brahman, the ultimate reality. The Bhagavad Gita, a sacred Hindu text, describes the soul as eternal and indestructible, moving from one body to another like a person changing clothes. Buddhism and rebirth. Unlike Hinduism, which emphasizes an enduring soul, Buddhism teaches anatta, or the doctrine of no self, suggesting that there is no permanent, unchanging soul. Instead, what is reborn is a collection of karmic energies and consciousness, shaped by past actions. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is to achieve nirvana, a state of enlightenment where one transcends the cycle of birth and death. The belief in reincarnation is not limited to Eastern traditions. Some mystical sects of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, such as the Kabbalah in Jewish mysticism, have also explored the idea of the soul's journey through multiple lifetimes to attain higher wisdom. Evidence and case studies of reincarnation often considered a religious or philosophical idea. Some researchers have attempted to study it scientifically. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, spent decades investigating cases of children who claim to remember past lives. In his research, he documented thousands of cases where children provided specific details about past identities, locations, and events that they had no way of knowing. But some of the most compelling cases include children who recall past lives with verified details. Many children between the ages of 2 and 6 have provided names, locations, and events from their supposed past lives, which were later confirmed through records and witness accounts. Birthmarks and injuries that correspond to past life trauma. Some individuals have birthmarks or physical deformities that seem to align with injuries or wounds reported in their past life memory. Phobias and emotional connections to past experiences. Some people have unexplained fears or strong attractions to certain places, cultures, or time periods that align with past life recollections. One famous case involved a young boy in India who accurately described details about a past life in a nearby village, including the name of his previous family and how he died. His descriptions were later verified, leaving researchers baffled as to how he could have known such details. Similarly, a widely studied case in the United States involved a boy named James Leininger, who from a very young age recounted vivid memories of being a World War II fighter pilot. He provided specific details about aircraft, battle locations, and even his previous name, which was later matched to a real-life pilot who had died in combat. Past life regression and hypnosis. Some people attempt to access memories of past lives through past life regression therapy, a technique that uses hypnosis to explore subconscious memories. While some skeptics argue that these experiences may be the result of imagination or suggestion, others claim that they provide genuine glimpses into past incarnations. Famous hypnotherapists like Dr. Brian Weiss, author of Many Lives, Many Masters, have documented cases where patients undergoing regression therapy recalled past life experiences that seem to explain deep-seated fears, relationship patterns, and even physical ailments. Some individuals claim that these regressions have helped them resolve unexplained anxieties or personal struggles by uncovering past life traumas. However, the scientific community remains divided on the validity of past life regression, with critics arguing that the memories retrieved could be false recollections created by the subconscious mind. Despite this skepticism, the practice continues to be widely explored by those who believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation in different cultures and traditions. The concept of reincarnation extends beyond organized religion and has been found in various indigenous and ancient traditions around the world. Ancient Egyptians believed in the idea of the Ka, a spiritual double that lived on after death and could be reborn. They practiced elaborate mummification rituals to preserve the body for the afterlife, believing that the soul would return. Celtic and Druidic traditions embraced the idea that warriors would be reborn to continue their battles, reinforcing the belief in an ongoing cycle of existence. African and Native American spiritual systems often speak of ancestral spirits returning in the form of new generations, maintaining a connection between the living and the dead. In modern times, the idea of reincarnation has gained popularity beyond religious circles, with many people in Western societies expressing belief in past lives, soul evolution, and spiritual rebirth. The growing acceptance of the idea suggests a deep-seated human desire to understand the mysteries of life and death. Philosophical and ethical implications of reincarnation. If reincarnation is real, it presents profound philosophical questions about justice, personal responsibility, and the nature of the self. Moral consequences. If every action carries consequences that extend beyond a single lifetime, does this provide a greater sense of ethical responsibility? Would people behave differently if they believed they would have to face the consequences of their actions in another life? Personal growth and soul evolution. Some believe that reincarnation allows the soul to learn different lessons in each lifetime, experiencing various perspectives, hardships, and joys to reach higher consciousness. The purpose of suffering. If suffering in this life is linked to past karma, does this mean every challenge serves a higher purpose? These ideas have been debated by philosophers, religious scholars, and spiritual seekers for centuries. Some argue that reincarnation provides a more just and balanced view of existence, where every soul is responsible for its own destiny, rather than being subject to random fate. Others question whether such a system could exist without proof beyond anecdotal cases. Regardless of personal beliefs, the idea of reincarnation continues to captivate the human imagination, offering hope that death is not an end but merely a transformation, a new beginning in an ongoing journey. One of the most deeply ingrained beliefs across many religions and cultures is the idea that after death, the soul is judged and sent to a realm that reflects its actions in life. Whether a place of reward and bliss, commonly referred to as heaven, or a place of punishment and suffering, known as hell. This belief has shaped human morality, ethical systems, and religious practices for centuries, influencing how people live their lives and what they expect to face in the afterlife. The concept of divine judgment across religions. The idea of divine judgment is found in many spiritual traditions, though the specifics vary. Some religions depict it as a moment of reckoning, where one's actions are weighed, while others describe a process of purification or reincarnation based on past deeds. Christianity teaches that after death, individuals face judgment from God. According to many Christian denominations, there are two types of judgment: particular judgment, which occurs immediately after death, determining whether the soul goes to heaven, hell, or purgatory; final judgment, which happens at the end of time when Christ returns, and all souls are resurrected and judged collectively. Heaven is described as a paradise where believers live eternally in God's presence, while hell is a place of eternal separation from God, often depicted as a realm of torment and suffering. Some Christian traditions include the idea of purification. Before entering heaven, in Islam, the afterlife is central to faith. Muslims believe that after death, souls enter barzakh, an intermediate state before the day of judgment. On Judgment Day, every soul will be judged by Allah based on their deeds, recorded by angels throughout their lifetime. The righteous are granted entry into Jannah, paradise, described as a place of unimaginable beauty, peace, and divine reward. Sinners face Jahannam, hell, a place of suffering, though some interpretations allow for eventual redemption and mercy. Jewish beliefs about the afterlife vary, as the Hebrew Bible focuses more on living a righteous life than on detailed descriptions of what happens after death. Some Jewish teachings describe a form of judgment where righteous souls experience Olam Haba, the world to come, a state of spiritual fulfillment. Others believe in Gehinnom, a temporary place of purification rather than eternal damnation, where souls undergo a cleansing process before moving on. Hinduism and Buddhism. While Hinduism and Buddhism focus on reincarnation, some traditions also describe Yama, the god of death, who judges souls before they are reborn. Hindu texts describe Naraka, hell, as a realm where souls temporarily experience the consequences of bad karma before being reincarnated. Buddhism's concept of karma and rebirth dictates that one's actions determine their next life, with those who accumulate negative karma potentially being reborn into lower realms. Despite differences in interpretation, the idea of judgment after death serves as a guiding principle in moral decision-making across many faiths. Heaven, a realm of eternal bliss. The idea of heaven varies across traditions, but it is generally envisioned as a paradise where the soul experiences eternal peace, joy, and unity with the divine. Some common descriptions include Christianity, a place of eternal life with God, often depicted with streets of gold, angels, and everlasting joy. Islam, a lush garden filled with rivers of milk and honey, where the faithful enjoy eternal comfort. Hinduism, Swarga, a temporary heavenly realm where souls enjoy rewards before being reborn. Buddhism, pure lands or celestial realms where enlightened beings reside, aiding others in spiritual progress. In many traditions, heaven is not just a physical place but a state of ultimate spiritual fulfillment. It is often described as the final destination for those who have lived righteous lives. Hell, a realm of punishment or purification. The concept of hell also varies, ranging from a place of eternal damnation to a temporary state of purification. Some depictions of hell include Christianity, a fiery underworld ruled by Satan, where souls suffer for eternity; Islam, Jahannam, a place with multiple levels of torment, but also a place where some sinners may eventually be forgiven. Hinduism, Naraka, where souls experience suffering before their next reincarnation. Buddhism, several realms of hellish existence where karmic consequences are faced before rebirth. While some traditions describe hell as eternal, others believe it serves as a temporary purification process, after which souls may be given a second chance. Moral and philosophical implications of divine judgment. The concept of divine judgment raises profound questions. Justice versus mercy? Is judgment solely about punishment, or does divine mercy allow for redemption? Eternal versus temporary consequences. Should a finite life's actions determine an eternal fate? The role of free will. If judgment is based on choices, how does divine intervention influence outcomes? These questions continue to shape religious thought and personal beliefs about what happens after death. The human fascination with death and the quest for immortality have been central themes throughout history. From ancient civilizations to modern-day technology, humans have consistently sought ways to transcend the limits of mortality. Whether through religious beliefs, philosophical exploration, or technological advancements, the desire to conquer death is as old as civilization itself. This desire raises important questions about the nature of existence, the possibility of life beyond death, and the lengths to which humanity might go to achieve eternal life. Mythological and religious pursuits of immortality across different cultures. Myths and religious stories have often depicted figures who sought to defy death or achieved immortality, either through divine favor or supernatural means. These stories reflect humanity's desire to transcend the inevitable fate of death and experience eternal life. Ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife where one could live forever. But this immortality was not guaranteed for all. Pharaohs, who were seen as gods on earth, were often embalmed and buried with riches to ensure a comfortable passage into the afterlife. The Book of the Dead guided the deceased through trials to reach the field of reeds, where they could live forever in peace. The Egyptian concept of Ka, the life force, and Ba, the soul, were integral to the idea of immortality, both of which had to be preserved for the deceased to continue their existence beyond death. Greek mythology contains stories of gods and mortals alike who sought immortality. Heracles, one of the greatest heroes, was granted immortality after completing his 12 labors and ascending to Mount Olympus. Tithonus, on the other hand, was granted immortality by the gods, but was cursed to live forever without eternal youth, ultimately becoming a symbol of the dangers of seeking immortality without considering its consequences. Christianity offers the promise of eternal life through faith in Jesus Christ. Christians believe that after death, believers are resurrected and granted eternal life in heaven. The concept of the resurrection exemplified by the rising of Jesus on the third day after his crucifixion, is central to Christian hope in defeating death. In Christianity, immortality is not achieved through human effort but through divine grace, emphasizing the need for faith, redemption, and salvation. In Hinduism, immortality is often tied to the soul's journey through cycles of samsara, rebirth, until it reaches moksha, liberation. The soul, or Atman, is considered eternal, and the ultimate goal is to transcend the cycle of rebirth and merge with Brahman, the divine. While physical immortality is not a common goal in Hinduism, spiritual immortality through union with the divine is highly valued. Buddhism. Similar to Hinduism, Buddhism teaches that death is part of the cycle of samsara and that true immortality is achieved not through physical means but through the attainment of nirvana, the cessation of suffering and the end of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Buddhists believe that by achieving enlightenment, one can transcend death and achieve a state beyond existence, free from the bonds of material life. Philosophical and existential reflections on immortality throughout history, philosophers have grappled with the concept of immortality and what it means for human existence. Many have questioned whether immortality would truly be desirable or whether it would diminish the value of life itself. Plato. In his dialogue Phaedo, Plato explores the idea of the soul's immortality through the character of Socrates. Plato presents the soul as eternal, arguing that it exists before birth and continues after death. For Plato, immortality is tied to the pursuit of knowledge and truth, with the soul's journey toward the divine representing the ultimate purpose of life. Aristotle. While Plato posited an immortal soul, Aristotle was more skeptical of the afterlife. He believed that the soul's existence was tied to the body, and that death marked the end of personal consciousness. However, Aristotle's concept of the unmoved mover, a divine, eternal source of motion, suggests that there might be an eternal principle that transcends individual mortality. Existentialism. Existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Martin Heidegger have examined the human condition in relation to death, often emphasizing the fleeting nature of life. Sartre, in particular, believed that the awareness of death gave life meaning, as it motivated individuals to live authentically. For existentialists, immortality is less desirable than the freedom to shape one's own existence in a finite lifetime. Transhumanism. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the rise of transhumanism has shifted the conversation about immortality toward technological means. Transhumanists believe that through advances in biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology, humans can transcend the limitations of biology and achieve radical life extension or even digital immortality. This movement is built on the idea that death is a medical problem that can be solved through innovation and progress. Technological pursuits of immortality. Many futurists and technologists now view death as a problem that can potentially be conquered through various methods. Cryonics, one of the most well-known attempts to achieve immortality through technology, is cryonics. This process involves freezing the body immediately after death in the hope that future scientific advancements will allow for revival and treatment. Though cryonics remains controversial and unproven, it is based on the belief that death is a reversible process if the right technologies can be developed in the future. Mind uploading. Another futuristic idea is mind uploading, also known as whole brain emulation. This concept involves transferring the human mind and consciousness into a digital medium, allowing it to exist in a computer or artificial body. Proponents of this idea argue that by copying the brain's neural patterns, a person could achieve a form of immortality, effectively living on as a digital entity long after their physical body has died. Genetic engineering and life extension, advances in genetic research and biotechnology have also led to the pursuit of life extension. Scientists are exploring ways to slow down or even reverse the aging process, extending the human lifespan significantly. Research into telomeres, stem cells, and the genetic pathways of aging could eventually lead to therapies that dramatically prolong life or even eliminate certain causes of death altogether. Nanotechnology. Nanotechnology involves the use of microscopic machines that could repair cells, fight disease, and even reverse the aging process. By using nanobots to monitor and repair biological functions at the cellular level, proponents hope to extend life indefinitely. These nanobots could potentially repair damaged tissue, reverse genetic mutations, and prevent the degeneration of the body's organs and systems. Artificial intelligence, AI, and immortality. As AI technology becomes more advanced, some researchers speculate that machines could play a role in achieving immortality. AI could be used to simulate human consciousness, allowing people to live on as intelligent digital entities after death. The possibility of an AI afterlife, where one's personality and memories are stored and interacted with by a machine, is becoming a topic of serious consideration in the realm of transhumanism. The ethical and philosophical questions raised by immortality, the pursuit of immortality, whether through religious, philosophical, or technological means, raises profound ethical and existential questions that challenge the very nature of human existence. The value of life. If immortality were achieved, would life lose its value? Many philosophers argue that death gives life meaning, as the knowledge of our limited time motivates us to live fully and purposefully. Would immortality diminish the urgency to live authentically and make meaningful choices? Social and economic implications. If immortality were only available to the wealthy or technologically advanced, it could create a profound divide between those who can afford to extend their lives and those who cannot. Such inequality could deepen existing social, political, and economic divides, leading to ethical concerns about fairness and justice, the nature of the self. If technology could allow for mind uploading or digital immortality, would the person who lives on truly be the same person? The question of whether a digital copy of a mind is the same as the original consciousness challenges our understanding of identity, continuity, and the soul. The quest for immortality reflects humanity's deepest fears and desires. The fear of death and the desire for transcendence. Whether through religion, philosophy, or science, the search for eternal life continues to shape our worldview, pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human. In conclusion, the question of what happens after death has inspired countless philosophies, religious beliefs, and technological pursuits throughout history. Whether through the promise of reincarnation, the concept of divine judgment, or the hope for immortality through technological advancements, humans have always sought to understand and overcome the mystery of death. This desire is deeply rooted in our fear of the unknown and our yearning for continuity, meaning, and purpose. While we may never have definitive answers, the ongoing exploration of life after death reveals much about who we are and how we understand our place in the universe. Ultimately, it reminds us that the quest for understanding death is as much a quest for understanding life itself, a journey that continues to inspire, challenge, and shape the human experience.